Hello, good people. Welcome back to the Kuhb Games YouTube channel. So, got to play another one of the Atlanta GOAT format Wednesday night GOAT tournaments last night, and ended up winning again. So that's two of them in a row. Decided to not just play Warriors for this one. Wanted to try out the Oops of Cal Thunderclap list from the recent FLC, and worked out well for me. So we're just going to be watching the grand finals match here. I did have to come up from the losers bracket. I actually lost round one. I was actually still on the clock at work because I have to close every day this week. So I was a little distracted. Kind of played like an idiot. But yeah, was able to rally back from round one and take the tournament. Obviously a smaller one, so it's not like, coming back and, winning a PWCQ or GFC or something like that, but, still cool. Still have a lot of fun, and I like winning money. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the deck, and I think I'm going to work with it a little bit more going forward. So, yeah, we are playing against Warriors, and, of course, we have already won the first match of the finals, so we do have to win again. Because my opponent was in the winner's bracket, and that's kind of how double elimination works. So let's get into it. I believe this is the first time in the tournament that I'm actually not on the play, which kind of sucks. I look at my hand, and I'm like, this isn't very good. Double trap dust shoot on the draw against Warrior is not really where you want to be. But my opponent leaves 5 cards in hand, so maybe we can get these trap dust shoots going. And, actually get some value out of them. Maybe my opponent's, bricked up on monsters or whatever, because generally, after a pot of greed hand, if, like, your first play is just Kaiku set, it's not really that powerful. So, I decide to lead off on Snatch Steal. The reason being is, I just want to dust shoot my opponent's hand, get my opponent down on cards, and just start getting aggressive as possible. If my opponent minuses by using a battle trap, that's totally fine. If they do reveal an MST here, of course I can summon Blade Knight and set these and just attack over the Kaiku if I want to be aggressive, or I can set the Spy. But pretty okay with the Snatch Steal play here, and I do like summoning Blade Knight over setting Spy. I think this is game 1, so the opponent could definitely have Knock in their hand. And instead of letting the Spy go, I can get aggressive, pick up a +1 in battle here, which gets us back to even after our opponent's pot of greed. And then I can trap dust shoot, and I can see my opponent's hand, and we can go from there. If my opponent doesn't have a knock, I can play the Spy. If they do, maybe wait on the Spy. Who knows? So here we do throw off the trap dust shoot. We see a Kaiku, a Breaker, a level 2, a BLS, a Donzalug, and a Snatch Steal. So right off, I don't really care about the Kaiku. I don't really want my opponent to have Breaker, because if they break the Rhoda, that's kind of annoying. Then we kind of don't have a follow-up to some of these. Obviously, we don't care about the level 2. BLS could be concerning a little later if our opponent gets a light monster, which they currently don't have. I also don't like the Donzalug, because my opponent does have Snatch Steal, so they could, Snatch Steal the Blade Knight, summon Donzalug, attack, and get rid of my Gravekeeper Spy. And then, I do have an out to really both of the monsters, because Rhoda can get Zombra. We are playing one copy of Zombra in the main here, but I kind of don't want to use that if I don't really have to. So I think what I like here is take Breaker, take Donzalug, and if my opponent is able to find a light at some point, we do have Rhoda for Exiled Force to take care of a BLS. So let me see. We're actually talking in a voice chat here. That's why I didn't record this. I was thinking about recording it, but all of our things are going to be done verbally, so you won't see a lot of communication in the chat. So I do take Donzalug Breaker here. I think that's totally fine. So my opponent is pretty much just walled up this turn. They can snatch. They can summon Kaiku. That's fine. We take 3,800. Actually, the Blade Knight's only 1,600. So we only take 34. Not really that big of a deal. We're going to gain 1,000. We get to set the Spy, and then our opponent is actually walled. I guess they weren't walled up that turn because of the Snatch Steal. But that's totally fine. So we can go get Blade Knight, and we can attack over Kaiku, and that kind of walls our Blade Knight. We can also, let's see, we could also just set Spy. Now I guess we can't set Spy because of the level 2. Well, we could because we drew this Ring of Destruction. So I remember tanking on this play quite a bit, and I decided to go with the aggressive route. I'm just going to go get the Blade Knight. I don't hate that. So I think the thought is we can get Blade Knight and attack over this Kaiku. If our opponent draws a set, they can crash with the Blade Knights, but they still don't get a light into their grave. Unless they draw a Blade Knight of their own. Well, if they draw a Blade Knight of their own, they can crash their Blade Knight, but then they have to -1 to summon the BLS. And if we keep this ring to deal with the level 2, then we don't have an answer to BLS. So, of course, we could have just kept the Rhoda to be an answer to BLS with Exile Force, but I think this is fine. We just kind of get aggressive here. We've got the bigger Blade Knight. We're going to sit here and start gaining 1,000 every turn, but our opponent draws a Blade Knight. And they opt to not crash, which I thought was a little weird. Even if you run into a battle trap, I think that's totally fine. You can just summon out BLS. My Snatch Steel's already gone. So I'm not really sure about that. I draw Knock, though. Obviously, that's not very good. But I'm going to set Spy, set Knock. I don't know if I like this. What does that really accomplish? Because now the opponent can just summon the level 2. They can make their Blade Knight 2,000. And then I don't even attack my Blade Knight? Yeah, so this play doesn't really make sense to me. Yeah, I don't like setting the Spy there at all. I think, because, yeah, the opponent can easily just draw a back row, summon this, attack, and then I have to ring the level 2, which I do. No, I think this was just not good for me. I should have just kept going with the line of play that I had before. Now the opponent decides to ram my Blade Knight into my Blade Knight, which means they still don't get the light in their graveyard, so somehow this works out. There are a few questionable turns here from both sides, I think. I definitely don't like my play, and I don't think my opponent's play is amazing here either. But I get bailed out, I guess. I get to draw Delinquent Duo and get rid of this BLS that I had no other answer to. Opponent draws Exile Force. I'm like, okay, this is fine. And then they flip up Premature Burial, and automatically I'm like, okay, this is not fine. So we're going to take 2,000 here. But we do have a lot of draws to get us out of this. Premature Burial is one of them. We can get back our own Blade Knight and crash, which is exactly what I do. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and attack it. Just get them off the board, so don't give our opponent a chance to draw like a Sakuretsu or Mirror Force or something like that. Opponent draws Sasuke off the top. We go to 100. We need something here, because obviously all we have is this Nobleman of Crossout, and we draw Exile Force. So we live to see another turn. Our opponent draws a back row. We draw Solemn Judgment, which is pretty good. Opponent draws a Dawn. We're going to Solemn Judgment for 50 life points. You love to see it. Draw the Dead Zaborg. And that's one of the problems of playing Monarchs against the Warrior deck. A lot of times you can just brick on them. Set another Solemn Judgment. Opponent activates Call of the Haunted, and I'm going to pay a whole 25 life for that. We draw Breaker, which is huge here. I sit actually think about whether I need to activate it or not. And then just kind of looking at my opponent's graveyard. If they're only playing 2 Kaikus, those are gone. 1 Blade Knight out of 2 or 3 is gone. If they're only playing 1 Sasuke, it's gone. So my opponent's really looking at like 2 Blade Knights, 2 Rhoda, and a Breaker that can actually kill me here. And I eventually just decided that is a lot of cards, obviously. But I just decided that, me not attacking here is basically playing to not lose the game. Whereas, if I get my opponent down to 43, we're in striking distance of just a couple of turns. We just need to fade a couple of draw steps. And we're good. So I draw Magician of Faith, which is totally fine. I have Rhoda, That's really good. Snatch Steel's probably not going to do it because I'm at 25. I'm probably just going to die, but Rhoda's pretty good. So, you know. We'll attack with the Breaker, get the opponent down to 27. So now, kind of have lethal here. We just need to fade one more draw step. Our opponent has a Rhoda for them off, and they do draw a Kaiku. So, gonna drop game one. A little iffy play from my end for sure. I don't like how I played the turn that I set the Spy. I think that was just not very good. So I don't actually remember how I sided. I think because I tried a few different variations. I played against Warriors I think 3 times in this. I tried a few variations where I left in Zaborg. I tried some where I actually sided in Mobius with brain control, and then I tried some where I didn't side in and like just took out the Monarchs altogether because they're kind of bricky. I think I've landed on just cut the Monarchs altogether, to be honest. I know brain control is pretty good against Warriors, but a lot of times the Monarchs are just going to be bricks and they're going to sit in your hand. They're terrible to draw late game. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of off them in the matchup. So I think that's what I did for this one. I don't think there are any Monarchs in the deck, but we get to go first. We draw a Delinquent Duo with a Judgment hand. Pretty big fan of this. I also have Moth, not Moth. This is not a bug. But we're gonna do our opponent. We get rid of Dust Tornado, Kaiku. I'm gonna set Moth and set the rest of the hand. We get duoed. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, the opponent's probably low on cards, or the opponent's definitely low on cards here. We're probably not going to get full value out of our second duo, but I think it's still fine. I let the Breaker go through. They get rid of the Torrential. That's totally fine. I can Mirror Force if I want to, but I don't think there's really any reason to just take out the Breaker here. I'm going to get my duo back, and I'm probably just going to 1-for-1. Here, I actually brought in Chaos Sorcerer, which kind of goes against my thing of don't bring in the Monarchs because they're bricky. Chaos Sorcerer kind of bricky too, but this was the first time that I really tried it out in this tournament, and just wanted to give it a shot. And I think it probably would be off of Chaos Sorcerer going forward as well. Here, I'm just going to duo. It's likely not getting any better, so just throw it off and get the value while I can. And now I'm going to Mirror Force the Breaker. I don't really have a whole lot else going on, so I don't want to take too many attacks and get too low on life. I'm just going to draw a Dust Tornado and set it. Opponent draws and passes. I draw a Blade Knight, which is great. Just going to summon an attack. Obviously, we need a Dark here for this Chaos Sorcerer, but the summon and attack go through, which is just kind of wild. I didn't expect any of that. My opponent summons their own Blade Knight. They Dust Tornado, or they Snatch Steal. I Dust Tornado the Snatch Steal, and the reason that I'm doing it here is because my opponent, in the first match that we played, they did show that they are siding in Mobius, so I didn't want to give my opponent the chance to get rid of my Blade Knight, and then just be able to attack me for 2,000 for free, even though I would be able to Solemn Judgment the Mobius. So here, I feel like I'm pretty locked in to just Solemn Judgment the Solemn Judgment, and we'll just, you know, take a 1-for-1 trade if the opponent wants to offer it. They do not. I draw Book of Moon, which is interesting. I could attack and then Book of Moon the Blade Knight. But I think, you know, I'm just going to sit back. If my opponent wants to attack, maybe I Book of Moon. If I attack, I don't want to run into a Sakuretsu and then have to use the Book of Moon, you know, just purely defensively to save life total. So I think this is a pretty decent mid-ground play here. And also it can protect against Ring, whatever. My opponent does draw Exiled Force. My opponent had Exiled Force a lot in both of these matchups. Both of these matches. So they attack me for 2,000. I'm going to take it, go to 1,000, and basically try to play around Ring here. I don't really want to Book of Moon the Blade Knight when I don't really have anything to do about it, and then them just, you know, run it back next turn, just be able to kill me. I go to standby phase. My opponent activates Ring, so it actually worked out. I'm going to Book of Moon the Blade Knight, and I drew Pot of Greed, which is just fantastic. So we would have lost the tournament right there had I not had exactly Book of Moon. I draw Zombra MST, which is pretty good. Now we have the Dark for Chaos Sorcerer to hopefully make a comeback here. MST, you know, obviously just a good card. So we'll attack over the Blade Knight, set a MST. Opponent draws Blade Knight, okay? So we're going to take 100, but now the Chaos Sorcerer is online, so we're looking pretty good here. We do have Smashing Ground, though what I'm going to do is summon Chaos Sorcerer, and since the opponent already has a light in the graveyard, I'm just going to attack over the Blade Knight. There's no reason to Smashing Ground here and put our opponent to 200, I don't think. I guess we could. It plays around. Well, no, we don't have to play around Premature Burial because we have the MST. So, yeah, I think I'm totally fine with just attacking over the Blade Knight. Getting our opponent into range of Chaos Sorcerer. So now, like, if they have a face-up monster, we can Smash and Ground. If they, you know, just set a back row, we have MST to take the game, and my opponent does just have a back row. I'm not sure what face-up monster they would really play out here. Maybe summon a DD Warrior Lady and not attack or something. I don't think that really makes sense. Especially game 2 and 3 when I'm likely taking out my Nox. And the opponent had shown that they would set DD Warrior Lady and stuff like that anyway. So, pretty good game here. That was, I remember being, you know, pretty on edge, on the edge of my seat, playing that one. Kind of came down to the end there. We get to game 3, and this is going to be the game for the tournament. Not a huge fan of my opening hand, you know. Spirit Reaper, Sakuretsu, Snatch Steal, all very good against Warriors, but Blade Knight, not really. My opponent's going to lead on Graceful Charity. I would love some Trinity of my own, but we actually get rid of Tribe, which I'm pretty happy with. Then I see Pot of Greed, and, you know, Graceful Pot of Greed is a very strong opener, but then, after that, our opponent leads off the same thing that they did game 1, just a Kaiku set back row pass. And I'm thinking, you know, how do I get back into this game? I decide to set Spirit Reaper instead of the Spy, just in case my opponent, you know, has access to Exile Force. I would rather my Spirit Reaper go than the Spy. Spy, I think, is just a little bit better at walling. And also Spy can help win the game a little bit later. So I think I would rather lose the Spirit Reaper here than a Spy. And we see my opponent Rhodas for Blade Knight, and I'm like, oh, that's good for me. They're not getting Exile Force, but they just have it. So opponent summons Exile Force. Going to be able to take out my Reaper. They attack with Kaiku. I'm just going to Sakuretsu it, get it out of the way. No reason to hold on to the Saku here for anything else, I don't believe. Especially when I can't really get my Blade Knights up to 2,000 very easily given what I have in hand. Here I just decide to be aggressive. My opponent is currently up on cards, so setting the Spy into, you know, Call, Premature Burial, or whatever is just such a tempo loss. They don't really like it. So I'm going to summon Blade Knight. It gets Sakuretsu, does a 1600, which I'm totally fine with. Fine with trading that. The opponent summons another Blade Knight, which is fine. We do have a Snatch Steal for that. They do set a back row. Going to Dust Tornado that. So now if I don't draw a monster, we can get very aggressive. And I draw Heavy Storm. So I think now's a really good time to just summon Blade Knight, Snatch Steal the Blade Knight, and get in there. The opponent doesn't have a light, so we're not going to get, you know, trashed by BLS here, but I actually opt to set the Spy. So now, even though I decided to make the aggressive play on the last turn, I decide not to here. Which is interesting, because, like, we're still playing into, you know, Premature Burial. I guess we're not playing into Call of the Haunted now. Interesting. I don't know. I think I like the idea of Snatch your Blade Knight, summon my Blade Knight, attack. And we see here the opponent does have Premature Burial, so yeah. I think maybe I made the wrong play there. Yeah, my opponent attacks us for 3,500. And they set 2, though, so, you know, good stuff could come here. They show that they have Trapped Dust Shoot still in the deck, and I'm going to get got on, like, turn 500 with a Trapped Dust Shoot. But they get rid of Exiled Force, which I'm pretty okay with here. I do believe I do just throw off the Heavy Storm. Yep, because I really, really want this play to go through. There's a reasonable chance, you know, that my opponent does have BLS or something like that in hand. So I'm actually going to Snatch Steal the DD Warrior Lady. I sat here and thought about that for quite a while. I was like, I can Snatch the Blade Knight, get some extra damage, attack over the DD Warrior Lady. But if my opponent has BLS in hand, they're just going to let that go. DD Warrior Lady is not like a DD Assailant. You do not have to banish. So I actually Snatch Steal the DD Warrior Lady, and I'm going to take some damage here, but it makes sure that their DD Warrior Lady and Blade Knight are both banished. And that's going to keep me safe from BLS here. So DD Warrior Lady is stacking to the Blade Knight. I take 500, get him out of there, attack the opponent for 2,000, and we're down to 1 card each. So even though the opponent started on Pot of Greed, we're back to even on cards. Did I go? No, they went first, right? Yeah, they had to go first this game. So yeah, we're back to even on cards in the turn cycle. I draw Gravekeeper Spy, which is dead now, because we're only playing 2 copies of Spies in this deck. Which may be something that I'll change going forward, but, you know, we'll think about that a little later. So here, just going to hit the opponent for 2k. They have a Mirror Force. That's fine. I'm going to set Spy. Hopefully wall whatever they want to draw into. They just set a backer. So I draw Call of the Haunted here. And I'm just going to set it and not flip Spy. I don't know about that one either. Could get my opponent down to 4,000. I guess I do have a lot of things that can attack over it, and I am at 2,400, so there's no reason to... Oh, their ring is gone. I don't know. I think you can definitely make a case for just attacking with the Gravekeeper Spy, but also walling up and just chilling here really isn't that bad. But my opponent Call of the Haunted's their Exile Force. They don't put it on the board, but of course, verbal communication in the chat, they did say they were just going to Exile Force my face down, so that's fine. I draw into Sasuke. I'm just going to summon it and attack, and I believe I'm actually going to call the Blade Knight here as well. No? So I would have put my opponent at 1,400. Yeah, I guess that's fine, right? Because if my opponent draws into, like, Zombra or whatever, it's just not good. And I'm also, you know, looking at my opponent could potentially be playing Spy, something like that. We hadn't seen any yet, but, you know, there's always a chance. So maybe getting my opponent into 1,400 doesn't really stop anything. So maybe just holding on to the call in case we need something else later, like we draw into, say, an Exiled Force, something like that. I don't know. I've played this game really back and forth. Like, I've been aggressive and then not aggressive. I haven't really committed to a game plan, so maybe there are just some spots in this game that I could look back on and be like, maybe you need to reassess what your role is in this game, because I'm certainly the aggressor here. And honestly, if I had gone with some of these aggressive plays, this game might be over already. Because, like, I would have done a huge chunk of damage to my opponent early on, and I didn't take that line. But now, pretty confident I can just summon Kaiku. If my opponent has a play, then I can call the Haunted the Kaiku. Like, if they have a Torrential, I can call the Kaiku. And then I'm safe from BLS, and I don't really have to worry about anything. But my opponent gives me the GGs, and that's going to be the match. So the play wasn't super tight. I will say I was very, very tired playing this game. It has been a very long week at work, and I've had an extra heavy workload, and my brain is just fried at this point. So not perfect play, but this was a very entertaining match. And, you know, always want to see more people jump into the Atlanta GOAT format, GOAT Wednesdays, because it's a lot of fun. We're playing for, you know, it's small stakes, but we are playing for some money. So, you know, come join the tournaments and come try to win some money. But that's going to be the video today. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll be back with the next one.